Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 274. Today on the podcast, Jen speaks with her guest, Cherylanne Skolnicki, about moving from job uncertainty to career confidence by buying the company.
You're listening to the Careers by Jen podcast. I'm your host, Jen Swanson. This is the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. Careers by Jen is a listener-sponsored podcast, and if you like the content, please consider supporting the show as a patron. You can do so for as little as $1 a month. Head over to CareersbyJenn.com and click on support to learn more. Hello and welcome to the podcast. If this is your very first listen, I'm Jen, and my goal here is to help you get the job, love the work that you're doing even more, and or advance your career. And I do get into wellness and well-being of heart and mind and body and soul a little bit too. I'm a little bit all over the map there, but I think it all relates to being well in the work that you do and to help you enjoy the work that you do a little bit more. If you are back for a second listen or a 274th listen, welcome and thank you. It is loyal listeners like you who inspire me to keep doing what I'm doing here on the show. Today we are talking about moving from job uncertainty to career confidence with a very dynamic guest, and I'm pleased to bring you this conversation. But first, I would like to acknowledge that this show is recorded on the unceded and traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, including the Matsqui, the Kwantlen, the Katzie, the Semiahmoo, and the Stolo First Nations. And for that, I am grateful. All right, so who is my guest today? We're only doing guests once a month now here at Careers by Jen, so it's very exciting. This is Cherylanne Skolnicki. She is an authority on work-life balance, on finding your purpose, and on achieving your full potential. Cherylanne is the founder of the Brilliant Balance Company, which is a personal development brand that prepares women to step into their full potential at work, at home, and as thriving human beings. Her top-rated podcast, Brilliant Balance, inspires thousands of women each week, and her distinctive coaching programs have helped hundreds of entrepreneurial and professional women make the changes needed to sustain work-life balance while reaching for their peak potential. Cherylanne worked at a Fortune 500 company for 15 years before starting her first business in 2009, and she and her husband John live in Cincinnati with their 3 school-aged children. We had a great time in this conversation, and it's not just for women. You know, men, please listen too. There are lots of things to learn, even though Cherylanne is focused on women in her business. I have things for everyone, so take a listen. I really hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. So Cherylanne, I want to start by asking you, why do you think so many people feel like life is not in balance right now?
Well, I think because we're using an outdated definition of balance. I think that the definition of balance that a lot of us are trying to measure against kind of goes back to that picture of, an old school scale with a pile of rocks on either side, and we're trying to get it so it's just exactly the same. And the definition of balance that I think is more contemporary is about dynamic balance. I picture like a ballerina, twirling across the stage and staying on her toes, but being able to dip and bend and twirl and change position as often as is needed, but do it like gracefully, right? And with a lot of strength at her core.
That's a good one, because it almost feels like an impossible thing to achieve. And work-life balance is such a big and I'm just going on this because of the title of your podcast and
Yes.
your company, and I thought, well, what does that mean, brilliant balance? What does that mean for someone who's trying to juggle work and home and all the other responsibilities people have in their lives?
Yes. Yeah. I really just think about it as landing on your feet. If you have good balance, then if someone knocks you off kilter, you kind of know how to stabilize. And that's the visual metaphor I work with for balanced life is, can you land on your feet? And, you might just stay on your toes to do it and stay pretty agile. And that's what gives you permission to explore brilliant possibilities and to know what you really want to steer your life toward. But if you feel like you're falling on the ground all the time, it's a lot harder to actually go do that.
And sometimes we self-sabotage, don't we?
Oh, of course.
Get in our own way. So our title today is From Job Uncertainty to Career Confidence. So how do we get there? How do we do that?
So I think that the first premise to talk about is confidence a cause or an effect? And what I teach and what I share with my audience and what I share in our coaching community is confidence is an effect. It's an outgrowth of one thing and really one thing only, and that's courageous action. So if we want to feel confident, we have to figure out how to act with courage. And, courage only exists in the face of fear. You can't be courageous when you eat a bowl of cereal, right? That's not a courageous act. There's no fear involved. And so that dancing at the edge of a place where we feel a bit of fear and we take action anyhow, that's what builds confidence. And we think, I did that. I survived. I got through that. And then that gives us the courage to take the next step, right? And over time, the cumulative effect of that is confidence. And whether that's applied to our career or any other aspect of life, it only comes, I think, when we take those courageous actions.
So how do you know when you're not at that point yet?
When you're not at the point of confidence? Mm-hmm. So most people think that they can see confidence in other people, right? I think a lot of people look around and think, well, it must be easy for her because she's confident, right? And I'm not. And what I'm curious about is, how do you know? How do any of us know, like, how someone is feeling on the inside, right? What we see, again, we observe courageous action and we think, oh, well, they must feel confident. So I'm not sure there is an external barometer of what it feels like, what it looks like, right? What we know how to observe is courage. And what we know is when we're taking courageous action, ultimately we feel a place where I think I can do this. You can see the growth trajectory. So I don't view it as a destination, really. I view it as a pathway that we stay on to higher and higher levels.
And I'm wondering I wonder, like, I look at people's Instagram, I look at Facebook, and it's all constructed. It's all edited, it's all curated, it's all made. So it's easy to see other people being, as you say, courageous and confident and looking amazing, but you're not seeing the rotten days. You're not seeing the messy hair. You're not seeing the, oh my gosh, I can barely get up because I didn't sleep all night. You're not seeing that. And so I wonder if that has done us a disservice in the whole trying to find our confidence.
Quite possibly. I think that my view is we need to let social media be what it is, right? Social media is a curated interface. It's our best foot forward. It's our opportunity to share who we most want to be, right? Kind of the best version of ourselves. And some people are choosing to flip it on its side and say, I'm going to let you into the messy behind the scenes. I'm not. That's not how I choose to use my social. So my social is a fairly curated, not fake, but fairly curated choice of what's kind of the best highlight of that day. What's a message that I want to share and what's a photograph that helps tell the story. I think that what we have to do is build real world connections with people who get the rest of the story. And for me, that's a pretty tight circle. I have trusted friends, trusted family members who do get the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? They get the top knot and the messy bun. They get my glasses instead of my contacts. They get the night where I've been up all night and they want to hear about the kid who was puking. Like, that happens to everyone. But I do think we get to choose who we share it with. I remember when social media first came on the scene, and it was probably like the MySpace era. Right. And I am too old to have really done MySpace, but I had younger cousins who were essentially blogging, right? They were telling their stories on these platforms. And there was such chatter in the family about why would they do that? It was like publishing their diary. Like, why would they want anyone to know? And our line for privacy has become so blurred about what we share, or almost what we're expected to share or allowed to share. And I think finding that line is important. So for me, if I take social media as what it is, right, it's everybody's best foot forward, and I remember that. And then I look to my authentic connections, friendships, family relationships, and realize that that's where I'm going to get the rest of the story. And no one else owes me that. No one else owes me, seeing their rough night or hard morning. But I can have that with that trusted few. That's what keeps it real and grounded, like underneath the rest of it.
I like that. Your best foot forward. That's good. It's a good way to think about it. So if someone is feeling uncertain in their job, in their career choice, how can they get from there to being confident in their career? How can we get from A to B?
Yeah. So I think probably starting with, what is the cause of the uncertainty? Does it really mean unhappiness? Mm-hmm. Like, something feels uncomfortable about the current role I'm in, or the company, or the industry. And when we say uncertainty, I get the imagery of, I can't quite put my finger on what it is, right? I'm not sure this is it, but I don't know what it is. I feel like that's maybe a set of words that could describe that state. And we hear this a lot in Brilliant Balance, people who will cross paths with my work and say, I don't know what I want, but I know it's not this. And that's step one. It's a really important step one to say that something about this isn't feeling right. So to translate that into a process, we typically are saying, okay, why isn't this it? Have you gotten a level of clarity and specificity about why this isn't it? And can we document that? Can you get to the essence of what's not working? And then can we look back at any previous work or roles or projects or assignments, or like little snippets of jobs, bosses that you're like, that was it. It was more like that. And then can we use those snippets to sort of make a collage, metaphorically, of what the ideal really would have to have in it, right? So for me, I knew I really love collaboration. I just am so high when I'm working with a group of smart people toward a common goal. So I did not like any role I spent 15 years in a corporate life, working in sales and marketing. And I didn't like any role that was very solitary. I liked the roles that were part of teams working toward common goals. I like to have a lot of control. So I didn't like roles where people were telling me exactly what to do and how to do it. And part of my nudge to entrepreneurship was rooted in that knowledge. Like, I like to call the shots and get to decide how I'm spending my time and what's getting funded and what's not, right? So for any of our, listeners or my clients, that's what we're always kind of listening for, is that how do you pull that thread and create a clear, crisp vision of what you do want? And then I think the confidence comes from knowing that you've aligned your work with that vision, right? Because then you can test it and say, well, now I've taken a job or I've created a role for myself that is aligned with all of these little bits and bobs that I think are going to make me happy. Does it? And when it does, I think we get that deep sense of fulfillment that says I'm in the right place.
Yeah. And I think that burnout, I've done a lot of work with burnout. And I think that one of the causes or the underlying roots of why people burn out is that disconnect between what you're doing and purpose. And wanting to know what your purpose is and feel aligned with it. And when you don't know why you're doing something, when you don't like what you're doing, when you have a disconnect with what you're doing for your job, for your career, then it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't light you up anymore. And you're headed down that road of disillusionment that can then continue on into burnout. And so I think it's really important to do that work. And I do that with my clients as well, is to figure out what you want, what lights you up, and figure out what you don't want. And we have our youngest who's just heading into first year university and doing a general arts because she doesn't know what she wants to do yet. But we've said to her, well, what don't you want to do? And she's working in a service industry job right now. And the high pace, high stress of what she's doing it really upsets her. She's learning a lot. But I said, so now you're learning that in your career, you don't want a job where everything happens like this.
Mm-hmm.
You need to find something where you can set the pace and where it can be a little bit of a slower pace. So what careers, appeal to you that would have that kind of a flow. And so it's really good to have these beginner starter jobs and to look back, as you say, on what where you were drained and where things were life-giving, I think.
Totally. And it's funny because I often will find people in the opposite state where they're saying this job just doesn't have enough juice, like I need a little more so that knowing yourself of how fast paced do I want it to be, how competitive, how goal driven, like all of those elements they're so foundational to what the work could be. Then you could apply that to any playing field, the industry, the company, but knowing those core attributes of what really makes me happy. I think purpose and maybe career confidence are aligned with, am I doing the kind of work I like, the day-to-day tasks that are on my list in an environment I like, against like a cause or a goal that I value and I feel is important and worthy, So for years, my success scorecard was like, did we sell more of this brand of laundry detergent, in North America? And that was not a good enough scorecard. I was never going to get excited enough about that being the highest possible outcome, we could achieve. And thank goodness there are people who can get excited about that and can go to work every day and feel like that's a fight they want to win. But for me to settle into a place where I truly felt like I'm doing the right work, I had to be creating a change in the world that I felt like was my dent in the universe, and I think that's what gives me confidence every day.
And where do your values come
in terms of
how confident you feel in your job?
Well, it's so timely you would ask me that because I was doing a one-on-one coaching call with a client today, and she's in a very high level role, like about as high level as you can get. But she's consulting into the company at that level. And when there's a values mismatch, like any kind of a values mismatch between what the work is that the company has to do and what you actually believe at your core, it's really hard to find peace. I don't know if it correlates to confidence, but it certainly correlates to peace, and over time, I think it probably leads to burnout if there's a values mismatch. Like, I really am pretty passionate about health and well-being. If I had to go sell like sugary drinks to kids, I would have a hard time feeling super pumped about that. Some people can, and I hope it's because there's nothing amiss about their values or what, maybe they're like, that's fun and I value fun and I want to create joy. If you can find that connection, you're going to be okay. But if there's a values mismatch, it's going to be hard.
Yeah, I know. I think I've told this story before, but my son, when he was first trying to figure out what to do, he sold vacuum cleaners door to door for a while. Oh my goodness. And at one point he said, I can't do this anymore. He said, I spent an hour with an 80-year-old woman today trying to sell her a $1,500 vacuum that she doesn't need. And he says, Mom, she doesn't need this. She's probably can't even vacuum for the next 10 years. And I feel so icky. I don't think those were his words, but he said, he said, this just doesn't feel right. And he quit. He ended up doing something else because the values were, I can't do this to somebody.
Here's what's fascinating. Like, now imagine that he was working on the team that developed Roomba, that device that like automatically goes around and vacuums. And you think, if you were selling Roomba to a busy mom pet owner who's like, I don't want to have to sweep this kitchen floor every 5 minutes with these pets and this baby and the Cheerios dropping. Like, I feel like it's such a flip to say it's not really about vacuums. That's not the problem. It was like the mismatch of the sales process and who's the customer and was the solution elegant.
Right.
Because man, I can find purpose in some of those vacuums if I think a minute.
Of course. And I think, he bought one himself. He thought the product was excellent. You got an 18-year-old spending $1,500 on a
vacuum.
Never have to buy another one in his life. So, he believed in the product, but it was, who he was supposed to be selling this to. And it just wasn't. And he says, she probably let me in just to be nice to me.
Right.
Oh, I just felt for the kid. So, yeah, it's interesting. I did an interview, just very recently with a fellow who's a software developer. And, he went into a bank and he said the person was using a technology that I developed. And he says, I didn't want to say, hey, I invented that, because he didn't want to sound like it was a line, I guess. But he said, wow, it made him feel good that he had solved a problem. Yeah. And that people were, oh, this thing solves all these problems, so, yes. And just the joy and the passion that he was talking with about the work that he did. And it was all about serving and solving problems. So he definitely found his purpose. And and
I think it's an interesting definition of purpose. Like, I often am encouraging people to think about, what is the problem you're interested in solving? What drives you crazy that you see this problem in the world, or what breaks your heart? And those are clarifying questions around what's worthy of my time and talent. And then, of course, you have to figure out, how do your skills align with this, solution? So I could see a software problem, but not know how to solve it. You have to pick a problem you have some capability in or aptitude for solving. But I think that's a really good, if you're feeling that level of uncertainty of, am I in the right work? Asking, what problems do I want to solve that I could envision feeling energized to wake up in the morning to go solve those, because they matter. That seems like an important question.
So tell me about your journey, how you got to be doing what you're doing now.
So I mentioned earlier, I spent 15 years working in a corporate job, like big tall towers and a cubicle of my own, right? That was like the living the dream. So I did that for 15 years, working in sales and then in marketing roles. And I reached a point where my uncertainty was, I think this ladder that I'm climbing is leaning against the wrong wall. I think if I look at what comes next, if I look up 2, 3, 4 rungs, and clearly I'm going to keep climbing, right? Do I want those roles? Do I want to be doing that work? It wasn't that I was unsatisfied with the work I was doing. It was, it was challenging enough to be engaging. I was working with really smart people. We were winning. Like, that's exciting. But I just kept looking ahead and saying, I don't think I want those jobs. I don't think I'm going to be making the dent in the universe that I really want to make. And in full disclosure, I didn't know exactly what I did want to do. And so I looked at, what is a problem I want to solve? And my first business was in the space of health and wellness, specifically food and healthy eating, because it was a problem I had solved for myself. I had had kind of a long-standing tumultuous relationship with food, ups and downs and good and bad and ugly. And when I got sorted and settled in a healthy lifestyle and a good relationship with food, like, it really opened a lot of pathways for me in my life. And because of that, I was really interested in, can I help other people see that same transformation? And can I help accelerate it for them, or like maybe ignite it, in them? And so I knew about that much. I wasn't really sure what that was going to play out to be. And so I ended up getting a coaching certification and starting a very small health coaching practice, which then led to a food preparation service, kind of like an early precursor to these ingredient delivery services that are like dropping all the stuff at your front door and then you cook it in your kitchen. Early precursor to that. And I did that for about 5 years until I got the vision for the grown-up business, and I sometimes, it's true. I mean, I view it as like, it was my transition. I needed a transition. It's like the guy you date after the breakup, and then that's not the guy, but you needed him to get to the next one. I needed that business to get clarity on what did I really want to do? And it became very clear that the woman who I was when I was working in my corporate job, that exhaustion, that burnout, that frenzy of like running hard all the time was causal to some of the food problems that I saw all of these people having. But it was like the food wasn't really the issue. The issue was about the whole lifestyle that was underneath it, and food had become like this numbing device. So the broader vision for the business came into focus when I realized like, that's actually the problem I want to solve. Like, these women were rock stars. And how do I get these people back on that path of feeling like their potential is limitless, but there are so many obstacles in the way as they add marriages and children and households to run. Like, we just kind of get like drown under the weight of it. And so that became a lot of writing and a lot of deciding on what is the problem I really want to solve. And it became, I want to help women, specifically for me, stand in their brilliance and achieve their full potential. Whatever the contributions that they want to make in the world, I want to make sure they feel like there's nothing standing in their way. And so we've built all of the services around Brilliant Balance to do that, from mindset shifts to productivity tools, to energy management programs, to things that help them clarify purpose and calling so that they can go make their mark in the world.
It sounds like you have a passion for it.
Definitely.
That's great. So where can people find you, Cherylanne, if they're looking to learn more?
Yes. The simplest thing to do is really just to Google Brilliant Balance. You'll get right to our stuff. And then we're on all the social platforms. So you can search for that on Facebook and Instagram and all the places, LinkedIn, to find your way to us.
Perfect. And what's one last piece of advice you have for the Careers by Jenn listener today?
I think the last piece of advice would be take imperfect action in the direction of your dreams. So much of what I see holding people back is the desire to get all their ducks in a row and get it perfect before they move. And it's been my experience that it's so much easier to steer an object in motion, so get in motion, and it's what gives you the chance to steer and to keep course correcting and pivoting. That's certainly been my case and the case of so many of the people that I've had the chance to work with.
I love that. I know so many people in the podcast realm who are talking about launching a podcast, but who talk about it and talk about it and talk about it and fuss around with it and wait till they have the best equipment and wait till, and they, and it's just do it. Just do 10 minutes. My first one was 10 minutes and it was terrible, but
it was out there.
It was out there. And once I hit publish, I'm a podcaster. Oh my gosh. And I said that I was going to do it every week. And so I need to now, because it forces you to do, to have accountability and to get out there. So I love that. Just, done is better than perfect is the expression that I've heard. And I love it because, so often we are waiting until it is brilliant. And you can't get there right off the mark most of the time.
No, definitely not. Yeah. There's so much wisdom in that of just getting started and trusting that it'll be better the next time and the time after that and the time after that.
Right. And if you need someone to walk with you, there are coaches like us out there.
You bet.
I can help you. Well, thank you for your time today and all of the work that you are putting out there in the world and all of the people you're helping. You're just definitely making a difference out there. It's wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Careers by Jen with Jen Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. You know, if every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.